We are creating a platform for those who are curious, one that tells the story from the artist's perspective, moments in time captured from the innovators who are reshaping dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. This is the Working Artist Project.
Hey guys, it's Darrian Douglas. Welcome to the second season of the Working Artist Project. In fact, if you're back after the first season, welcome home. And if you're not, let me tell you a little bit about this podcast. I sit down with some of the most influential and talented artists from multiple fields, and we discuss the challenges of constructing a successful career as an artist. You will be inspired and motivated after listening to these amazing people conquer challenges and live life on their terms. Welcome to the Working Artist Project. All right, guys, I want to welcome the one and only, the master of everything.
Oh, come on now.
Peter Nelson to the Working Artist Project.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. I want to get right into this. Why did you choose trombone, man? It's not an instrument that seems very popular.
Man, so it's not even really that interesting of a story, but I picked flute in 4th grade because I thought I had a really beautiful sound, and I got made fun of so much that I quit flute. And I know that's heartbreaking, but I quit flute. And then I think they took like the band program out of my school in 5th grade, and then in 6th grade they reinstated the band program, and I saw trombone and I was like, yeah, that one. I saw it didn't have any buttons, and flute had a lot of buttons. So, it was a little bigger. So yeah, I picked trombone, and I actually immediately really loved it.
And you're like, this is gonna be a little easier, man. There's
I thought
no buttons on this thing.
I thought so.
You were wrong, sir. Yeah, man. Trombone is a funny instrument because it seems to me like it's the most rebellious instrument. You know what I mean? And the most interesting people usually play trombone. You know what I'm saying? Usually it seems like trombone players, no offense, trombone players out there, but y'all seem to be more combative. But you are more chill.
I appreciate that, man. That's kind of you.
So did you realize that you were like making this like huge life decision to be a rebel when you chose the instrument?
No, but certainly I was made aware of it as I started checking out jazz music. I remember, really early when I fell in love with jazz music, I was 13 or 14, and it was almost exclusively with saxophonists and trumpet players and piano players and singers. And my stepdad actually got me a J.J. Johnson record, and that was like, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But as I continued to explore that, I noticed that there was this gap. There's not as much representation, certainly in the jazz trombone community, as there was in saxophone or trumpet per se.
Right.
Yeah.
So who is Peter Nelson?
Oh man, how long is this video?
Come on, baby, let's get in there.
I mean, just like anybody else, a sum of all of my experiences and influences, and probably a little bit of genetics, and
just 1% genetics. That's
no,
it.
man. I'm some of my experiences, man. I owe so much to the people that have contributed. Just like anyone else, man. I owe so much to the people that have supported me and the people that have pushed me to better myself and to look really critically at myself. So Peter Nelson, just like anybody else, is a sum of my experiences with other people and also internally.
Okay, man. The one thing I admire about all trombone players that I come across is their ingenuity and their understanding that in order to make it playing this instrument, I have to always think outside of the box. You know what I mean? Like, do you think that's something that is innate, like you were born with, or something that you developed? And if so, when did you realize you needed to develop it, and how did you do that?
Well, and I think thinking outside of the box or anything like that is a byproduct of just being in a creative mindset, right? And just being generally creative, not just in music, but in everything that we do. And I think I'm going to kind of segue this into something else that I'm thinking about a lot lately, and that's, I think Julia Cameron put it best when she said, we ourselves are creations. So the natural state of existence, I think, is creativity, and to not be creative is contrary to our true nature. So to think outside of the box and to be creative is something that I think I've always done only because I've allowed myself to do that. And I find that those of my friends and people I've interacted with that are adverse to that, adverse to the idea that they are not creative, they just don't trust themselves and don't trust the validity of their own creative potential content. And I think that's an issue. We're all creative, and we're all people that have the capacity to think outside the box if we just trust that we have something to offer and nothing to prove.
Damn, that's deep. Yeah, man. Speaking of creativity, like, what motivates you to create?
I mean, so many things, man. A huge motivation for me, just like so many others, is the people that I meet and the people. I think that this is a huge generalization, but this is something I truly believe, is that the only thing that really has any inherent meaning about being alive is our interaction with other, carbon-based organic life forms, our animals and people, other conscious, right. More consciousness. And that applies to, anything natural has consciousness, or has some degree of consciousness, some degree of existence. So, So I think that my experience with interacting with other people and interacting with my natural environment, nothing inspires me more than those things. And, on the flip side, to be very intentional with my creativity, I think that art throughout history has really been on the forefront, or at least in support of a lot of social progress and social change. And I think especially in a time, like the time that we're living in right now, we do have a responsibility as artists to be creating content that's moving the narrative forward as far as the social needs of today. I think that's really important. So those two things, my relationship with people and other consciousness, and then my relationship with what exists right now in our social climate.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, man.
That's pretty deep. So, man, you just said social climate. So right away I'm thinking about all of the stuff that's happening in politics and all of the police shootings. Like, specifically, I what I want to talk about? I want to talk about Donald Trump.
Okay. We can talk about Donald Trump.
And Hillary Clinton, both. Like, listening to them talk and listening to them ignore important issues. Like, how does that, how is that affecting your music, and how is it affecting your life, your day-to-day life?
Well, when you see a system that is so in such stark contrast to truth, the natural reaction is to try to put truth into the world, right? When you see a system that's in such stark contrast to love, that's so fear-obsessed and fear-centric, what do you have to put into the world? Love, We have, I think, when we see such destructive dialogue and such an aversion to truth, and such an incredible aversion to empathy, I think that often we're overwhelmed. Like, what can I do? That we've talked about that. Right, you know what I mean? Like, what can I do? And it's the old aphorism is true, man. Like, you can only do like you have to live by example, right? You have to just embody those things in your day-to-day life. You know what I mean? And you have to embody truth. You have to embody love. You have to, and all those things. It's not, like we were talking about before, it's not love and positivity, because of naivety or ignorance. It's love and positivity in spite of the fear and hate that's in the world, and that takes courage. It's easy to give in to fear. Yeah, it's easy.
Man, so how do you overcome that? Because to me, like, being a musician is terrifying. Yeah. At times, you say, "Oh shit, man, how am I gonna pay this rent? Like, I got this girlfriend, it's her birthday, but I don't have no money. Like, I got to figure all of this out." Or like right now, I got a lot of gigs, but man, shit, what am I gonna do in 6 months? You know what I mean? Like, how are you overcoming that fear?
Man,
it's gonna be different. Are you even fearful? I'm sorry, I'm just assuming.
I'm fearful, man. I'm fearful, and I think, to be fearful is to be human, right? But I try I devote a lot of energy to not letting that fear overcome me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and to understanding my fear and hugging it and holding it close and telling that fear, you know, I see you, I hear you, and then, but you know, I don't need you, and letting it move away, you know, and maybe that's a little, you know, nebulous, kind of esoteric, but I think that it's impossible to disassociate with fear by focusing on fear, right?
Damn. Okay.
It's impossible to disassociate from anything by actively trying to disassociate from that thing, because that's still where your focus is. So for me, what's the opposite of fear? Love.
Courage.
You know, courage. Yeah, all of these different things. So I'm more interested in focusing on those things and letting, like I said, like understanding that fear, but then just letting that move away, you know, and that's difficult. I mean, I don't have the answers, man. I don't know why you're asking me that.
You got all the answers. You got all the answers.
But you know, that's, you know, it's just a focus on love, man.
Yeah.
You
So,
know?
man, are you working on any interesting projects?
I am, man. I have a band that I've been thinking about putting together for a long time that's now been pretty active. We did some recording called Baya, B-A-I-A. Got some links to some videos.
Okay. What's the link?
It's going to be right up there.
Okay. It's going to be right up there. We don't know what it is, but it's just right there.
And then I have the Baya Sessions, which is an entirely different project.
Okay.
The Baya Sessions is on my YouTube channel. That's just going to be duos and trios featuring different good friends of mine. Most of the time, will feature their original music.
Dope.
So it's going to be cool. Yeah.
Nice, man.
Those are the two that I'm most excited about right now.
Wow. That's amazing. So, you guys, check it out. Check out the links that's going to be above and in the description. And let them know what you think about the videos, even if you hate them.
All right.
So, recently you have a record or an EP that's coming out soon, right? Let's talk about that. Like, how did you get to that point, and what was the catalyst for you to be like, now is the time for me to record something and to release it?
For 3 years now, I've been dealing with a very, speaking of fear, a really pretty crippling physical issue as a trombonist on my instrument, a type of dystonia, a type of vocal dystonia, also with spastic sign that turned into kind of an internal complex or chronic hyperventilation. And I, after years of not knowing what was going on and going to, you know, every teacher and, you know, doctors, ENTs that I could find, without any answers, I finally found my way to this woman named Jan Kagarais. And Jan saved my career, you know, probably saved my life, at least metaphorically, man. Wow. She's an incredible human being, incredible healer. And I encourage any musician having any issues, not just brass players, any musician, to go to her. She is the truth. I've sent so many friends to her. But in my recovery, a lot was having, you know, a lot of that had to do with trusting myself again and getting away from the fear of the instrument. You know, when you pull that instrument up and your body is afraid of it, because your body has these natural associations with tension and angst and hyperventilation, all this stuff. So like, I'm finally moving out of that. So I'm back to my duty as an artist and as a, you know, creative soul to, you know, have a little bit more output. And I think that healing has given me perspective. That issue gave me perspective. And it's just time to put out, you know, it's time, man. And sometimes you just know it's time. So I have these videos with this band that I'm releasing. And then we're doing a record in 2017. And then I'm also planning a second record with an entirely different group.
Okay. Damn, I'm fired.
Yeah, I'm super excited about them. And both are going to be exploring both are going to be exploring love, you know.
That's great.
And not in, you know,
exploring love.
In response to fear, you know, as an opposite. Love as you know, a warrior of love, you know, kind of thing. So
yeah, man, you made an interesting point, or you made just now when you said that you have to trust yourself again, you know. I feel like that's one thing that, as you don't really think about as a young person, but like the older you get, you realize that things are gonna happen in life, you're going to make bad decisions, and then they're going to be so bad, or they're going to affect you in such a way that you're going to have to learn to trust yourself again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, what kind of psychological things did you do to reach a place of peace?
Oh man, I think peace is compound. You know, like we're always adding to our own peace, to our space of meditation and our internal zen, and we're always that's compound. We're always that's always growing. So, but the things that I certainly don't think that I'm there. I haven't arrived. But the things that have been really helpful to me are empathy and forgiveness. And also something that, man, who shared this with? A good friend of mine shared this with me recently, the idea of self-compassion instead of self-esteem.
Oh, shit.
Because self-esteem is contingent. Okay. Self-esteem means I have to be successful. I have to be better than someone else. I have to be successful for my self-esteem to be there. But when I'm not successful, when I fail, which I'm inevitably going to fall short.
Right.
My self-esteem's not there for me. I lose self-esteem. But self-compassion says, hey, listen, man, I love you, and it's all right.
I hope y'all got y'all pencils out.
Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's all right to be you. and that self-compassion to me creates the environment to be creative, because then there's not an agenda. There's not for the self-esteem. You know, it's like self-compassion. I'm already like what I said earlier. This is a Janism right here, man. Is I have a lot to offer and nothing to prove.
Damn.
You know,
there it is.
These are just like just committing to that stuff, though. But, you know, man, that stuff is difficult to commit to.
Yeah.
Those ideas, especially living in a city like New York, as you know, as we've talked about many times.
Yeah, man. Wow, Peter. Shit, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Man, I don't even know what to ask you next. Okay, I got one.
Okay.
Man, why did you choose to move to New York City? You know what I mean? You play trombone. Nobody don't want a trombone player.
Man,
you thought you was gonna get a Sesame Street gig?
There it is.
I'm just playing, guys. I'm a trombone player. I love you. Corey Wallace.
But hey, man, if anybody from Sesame Street is watching this, you know, my website might be in the link. I don't know.
Yeah. We could put his website right up here.
Man, so I do have to express, I do like deeply love trombone, and it's not, you know, no one's gonna pretend that trombone is not underrepresented historically and in modern times, but I have so much respect for the trombonists that are doing it today. You know what I mean? That Ryan Cabriolet, Michael Dees, Marshall Jilks, Elliot Mason, man, there's so many dudes. My contemporaries, man, like Corey Wallace, man, great musician, man, great trombone player. Like, so I have so much love for trombonists and for the lineage of jazz trombone, because it's so rich, and it was really important to me to be a part of that. And it seems that in all of the musicians and a lot of the artists and authors that I respect and love the most, it seems like a lot of them lived in New York, or at least at some point in their life had some affiliation with New York.
Okay.
And I wanted, there's something here, and there's something about that. All my favorite music is here, so it seemed like the natural move. That seemed like the natural move.
So, man, coming from Michigan State, right? Mike Dees is your teacher.
Michael Dees was my teacher, yeah.
Rodney Whitaker. So, what are the one thing you learned from each of them that you're going to carry with you forever?
Oh, man. One thing?
From each of them.
I learned so much from both of those gentlemen. I still learn so much from both of those gentlemen. Michael Dees told me a story one time about a video that he watched of J.J. Johnson. And in the video, J.J. just played like two notes, and he played it was just like a C and an E flat, a high C and an E flat, and Mike's just talked about how moved he was by those two notes, and I mean I guess that's a lesson that we all have to learn, right? Is that it's not about it's not so much about the all this, you know, all this crazy content, but it's about the intent behind that content. And Mike is a musician that I've never heard him play something that it doesn't sound like he really believes.
Damn.
And
okay.
that's heavy, man. And even like, I've just never heard, you know what I mean? Like how he plays is exactly who he is. And that's really cool. And to observe that was a gift. And to hear him talk about JJ that same way was just these two notes, just like so moving. He meant it. So, you know, that was a great thing to both observe and to listen to him talk about. That's with Mike.
Wow.
And Rodney, man. Rodney taught me more about mentorship than anyone else in my whole life. Rodney Rodney definitely changed my life for sure. I remember I was on a marching band field. I was possibly going to go to Interlaken Fine Arts School for my junior year of high school and junior and senior year. And I had the audition like 2 days later. And I was at a marching band rehearsal in Lansing, Michigan. And Rodney called me. He got my number from like my teacher, somebody. And he invited me because they needed trombone players to fill out their third jazz band. And he invited me to come play with Jazz Band 3. And I don't know if he knows how much that changed my life. Mm-hmm. But I had already had so much respect for the school and had gone to see their concerts all the time and had so much respect for the professors there. And I went and played in Jazz Band 3, and I didn't go to Interlochen. I stayed in Lansing. I finished out, which there's so many benefits to that too, that I'm now learning even more. And then he just took me under his wing. I was teaching 2 days a week my freshman year in Detroit with Rodney, so I got to teach with Professor Whitaker. I got to watch him teach, and I got to watch him mentor, and at the same time be mentored by him. And I mean, just that, man. No one else in my whole life has taught me more about mentorship than Rodney Whitaker.
Man, what role does relationship building play in your success as a musician and a human being?
Man, everything. It's like, I mean, yeah, everything. I mean, relationship building on all fronts, man, right? It's like professional relationships, business partnerships, and stuff like that. And also our personal relationships, our friendships, our romantic relationships, familial relationships. I can go through every one of those and talk about how it's been, you know, central to my development, both as a musician and as a human being. And so I think it's everything. Like your family I have no misconceptions about how incredibly blessed I was with the family that I have. Like my parents split really early, but I never saw any animosity between them because I was like 2 months old or something like that, you know.
Wow,
and so
okay.
to me growing up, it was just normal. You know, I live with mom in Lansing, dad lives in Muskegon. It was not like a weird thing, you know, as opposed to like people that split later and kids are like 3 or 4. That's a little more difficult to process. Yeah. So my family was always really supportive. Both my parents are super creative in their own right. My dad is a lifelong glassblower. So I was just always doing creative stuff when I was a kid with him. And my mother is all about basically like community like development. Like she works for a nonprofit. She's the director of a nonprofit, for years, that does all this stuff with like bringing in senior programs and like affordable housing stuff, bringing in a new food resource center into this place, like different jobs programs. I mean, she's creative in her own right in that thing and in that capacity. And they, you know, because of their own experiences and because of their kind of professional autonomy, they were always supportive of whatever, you know, field I was going to go into. So when I said music, they were like, great, awesome, sounds good. And then you know, our friends, like, you know, you can't do anything without friends, man. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And business relationships, you know, most of my business relationships are my friends now. Right. You know, I actually, man, I'm going to tell a story. The first time I met you, and we talked about this story but this is really important. And this is something that is not unique to the jazz world, but it's central to the jazz world in my experience. And we met on a trio gig at you know,
Cubana Social.
Yeah, Cubana Social.
Was 4 years ago?
With Kathleen Murray. 3 years ago, man. 3 years ago. And I remember like both of us were like kind of arriving like almost late, you know what I'm saying? Like not late, but almost late. Like we were like, all right, we got like 7 minutes to set up and then hit.
Right.
So we set up, we said, hey, what's up, man? I'm Peter. Hey, what's up, man? I'm Darrian. And then we played the first set and we locked up real well. And it was one of those things where we're like, all right, cool. And then on the break, we were sitting at the bar and we hadn't talked for like 2 minutes. But we talked about something. And it just like, it was super, just this really natural conversation. And then we were quiet for a minute and you said, man, I think we should be friends. And I was like, yeah, man, that sounds great. Like, yeah, let's be friends.
Yeah.
And then you were like, no, man, I don't know if you know what you're getting into, man. I don't know if you get, when we're friends, you're fam.
Right.
And I was like, all right. Awesome. And then like 2 days later, I went to your birthday party.
Right.
Like 2 days later, I went up to Harlem to your birthday party. So it was, but that's it, man. Like that family, you know what I mean, is so central to everything that I do, so that's been the driving force in my relationship with music.
Right.
And, all the stuff I do.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
That's great. Damn.
So
Peter.
thank you for that, man. I appreciate that.
So just speaking of relationships and like, business relationships, friendships, like the other element or the next level to that is love, romantic love. You know what I mean? So, for me, I don't know. When I'm in love, I feel like, I can play music better. You know what I mean? Like everything has meaning. Like, what is it like for you when you're in love?
Man.
Or you are in love.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know my girlfriend Marta. We're all good friends. And love, I mean, absolutely, it's all those good things, right? It's a source of inspiration. It's warmth. It's safety. When we are fearful, when we are hurt, when we're we're damaged by something, it's safety. It's condolence, and it also challenges us. It challenges us, right? Like when you really love someone, you want to be the best person for them, right? And you want to be supportive and empathize and be put them before you, and that's those are big things that we have to learn how to do. And I have been really fortunate to share a lot of love in my life with a lot of different people, both platonically and romantically, and everything. I mean, I've learned so much from that love, and I think something that my mother taught me when I was really young. I don't even know like what context this was in, but she said that there's lots of different kinds of love. Like we have this weird thing in our minds where like love is either romantic or familial, and sometimes like friendship. You know what I mean? But that's so. I mean, that just doesn't allow for any other variance, and like or any other like. I mean, there's a love and a trust between like a mentor and a student. You know what I mean? There's love and trust between, like a client of some sort. And this, I mean, like there's so many different types of love to me. And when we stop being afraid of that, we can explore those different types of love, and they don't, so romantic love is amazing. But like when you realize there's all these other types of love that we cultivate, it kind of takes the pressure off of those of romantic and familial love to bear all of the responsibility to satisfy our own needs for love, right? So I think that's really big, is to not be afraid to love, not be afraid to explore all of these different types of love,
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You onto something, man. You should write a book, man.
All right.
So listen, man, I want to switch gears real quick and talk about New York City and the challenges that you faced. You know what I mean? Some that you anticipated and others that you didn't anticipate. Like, what are those challenges and how do you continuously overcome those things as they come up?
I mean, there's a lot to talk about there, right? We all have an idea of New York when we move here, right? And some of those things are going to be true, and some are going to be totally wrong, and some, you know what I mean? And some are things that we never thought of. So like, New York forces you to come, to grips very quickly with what you need to do to survive. Firstly, when you're like, okay, I want to play some music, and I want to, I'm about to smash on giant steps right now, but I also really got to, pay this rent, and I got to get some food to eat, and all these things. And for me, when I moved here, I moved to New York City and immediately started I had actually just started to have physical problems with dystonia. And at that time, I had no idea what it was. So I had to stop playing, like, months after I moved to New York City. I had to not completely stop, but I had to like not make that central, and I had to get another job that would support me.
Right.
So I bartended for a while when I moved to the city. And that, that was a whole other experience, because I got to listen to everybody's stories there. Because when you bartend, no one who works where you work that's their main thing.
Right,
you know what I mean? So you
right.
learn all these stories. I met a dancer. I met lots of people from other countries that were like working like summer jobs or this and that. You know what I mean? Here, like students and stuff like that. I met lots of people through that job, and that immediately showed me because I was also bartending like really close to Wall Street.
Oh,
and so I got to see some of the kindest people and some of the coolest people that I've ever met, and some of the worst people I've ever met in the small period of time that I was there. It was really intense.
Wow.
And
wow.
And I'm grateful for that. But that to me was a really good introduction to New York City. And then, the music industry, you know what I mean? Like, New York is great because whatever you imagine as far as like what your niche is musically, there are other people here that also love that and that also are trying to do that. So there's built-in community. You just have to find that community. You just have to make relationship with that community. So that's a great thing about New York, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are some of my thoughts.
So what challenges did you face that you had to overcome other than the dystonia?
So many of my challenges in moving to New York were psychological, around dystonia and around other physical things. But also, New York is so like, you can hear the best music. You can hear all these amazing musicians all the time, and it's so when you don't really have perspective on like, when you're ultra competitive, which is kind of like the nature of so much these days, you don't really have perspective to realize that when you hear these amazing musicians, they're just being honest. They're just like being true to themselves and being honest to what their output is going to be and what their message is, and it's not about like how bad they are, how many notes they're playing, how much slick stuff they play. So it's easy to hear them and become discouraged. It's easy to hear these crazy musicians, amazing musicians, and become discouraged. But for me, I can't really speak from personal experience as far as that's concerned, because for me it was always inspiring hearing those musicians. So because I was injured, and I was like, all right, when I get back, you know what I mean? When I get back. So, and challenges with New York. New York also puts serious pressure on relationships, right? Because it's expensive, and I think about this a lot, man. Like, think about like the average kind of right in the middle New Yorker, man. Like, they wake up, maybe they're married, maybe they have a kid, wake up, make sure their kids got breakfast, make sure their kid's ready to go to school. Everything's cool with their spouse, get their kid on the bus or get their kid wherever, on the subway, whatever. Jump on probably some kind of public transit, be totally smashed in, like totally like crammed in, sensory overload all the time. Get off of that transit, maybe get on another another medium of transit. And then get off that, walk to work. Maybe they've got a couple blocks. So again, sensory overload, cars honking, lights flashing, all this stuff. Do their job. Maybe they love what they do. Maybe they don't. You know what I mean? We're talking right in the middle.
Right.
Do their job all day. Potentially it's not a great day. Then they have to come do the same thing, sensory overload all the way home. Raise the kids for 10 minutes, eat dinner for 10 minutes, relax for 10 minutes, go to sleep, do it again. It takes a lot. I think it takes a lot to be in New York. You know what I mean? It takes, somebody told me, like, if you get through your first year, you've done well. If you get through your second year, you're here. I like that. and you know, I don't know if that's across the board, but I think that I have a lot of respect and a lot of empathy and compassion for people that have the courage and the fortitude to commit to life here, and trying to make their world and also the world around them a better place because of it. I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, man. What are 3 things that you're grateful for, man? And I want you to like really think about this. Like, if you just had to choose 3 things in your entire life, or 3 moments that you're really grateful for, that because sometimes I sit and I think about 3 things I'm really grateful for to keep my life in perspective. You know what I mean? To remind me of, like, no matter what's happening, that, hey man, it's gonna be cool. What are those 3 things for you?
Oh man, put me on the spot. Since I only get 3, I'm gonna have to say the first thing that I'm grateful for is absolutely love. First thing, the love, with my family and with my friends and with what I do, all those things. Love is certainly something I'm, incredibly grateful for. As far as perspective is concerned, I'm really grateful to my mother for always taking me to Fenner Arboretum Nature Center when I was younger, and showing me trees that were just so old, and like walking around in the world, and then sometimes going over to the Great Lakes in Michigan and swimming. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for like the natural world, because it just puts it in perspective. Like nothing is forever, and there are so many things in this universe that are, embarrassingly older than us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that just, it just shows you, just commit to what we have now. Commit to this right now, because there's no sense in worrying so much. Nothing's not that deep, basically. Yeah. And then, man, I'm pretty happy to be alive.
Right. You're the second person to say that.
I would say that.
That's
would
good.
say that, man. It's there's a lot of really terrible shit in the world, and there's a lot of incredibly beautiful shit in the world. And there are, things that are incredibly difficult to deal with and to move through, and there are things that are insanely gratifying, right? But I'm grateful that I get the opportunity, right here, consciously, to engage in those things and to be part of those things. So I'm really grateful to be alive.
That's what's up. I'll give you one.
All right.
The one thing that I'm most grateful for, that I could always think about to center and ground myself, is my nephew. And so I always think about us getting ice cream. You know what I mean? Like this one time we got ice cream, and like I'm just eating ice cream, I'm just looking at him, and he's like coloring. You know what I mean? Woo. He's like, Uncle D, you want to color? I'm like, yeah, man, let's color. And for whatever reason, that memory just always makes me like, okay, man, it's gonna be cool.
It's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
Kids, man.
Yeah.
I think kids are one thing that you can always trust, even if they're messing up, man.
Yeah.
I think something you can always trust about kids is they're doing the best they can, man.
Yeah.
Even if they're messing up, they're doing the best they can. Can't say that about everybody, but kids, man.
Right. There it is. I want to thank Peter Nelson for coming on the Working Artist Project.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me, Darrian.
Till next time.
Cheers.